Hello, welcome to 10 at 10. Usually we kind of give a little bit of a break at the beginning, just kind of make sure everyone gets in here. We'll start with the introductions. I'm Spencer. I'm a digital specialist here at Key Media Solutions.
And I'm Karina. I am the founder and CEO of Key Media Solutions, and we are super excited to talk
Yeah.
to you today. We get the opportunity to really work with a lot of B2B companies, especially in and around the manufacturing realm and in e-commerce space. And so today we've got a lot of data because we're seeing some really dramatic changes happening in this industry and evolving the tactics and things that we're doing for our clients. And I wanted to share some of those highlights with you.
Yeah.
So we're excited to get started, and I know we've got a lot to cover. So I'm going to jump right in and really talk about, the reality of what we're seeing right now and the things that are happening is within this B2B space for whether it's e-commerce, manufacturing, suppliers, that buyers are changing faster than a lot of these companies are keeping up with. And that's really what it comes down to. It's not a lack of product. It's not changing competition. It's the adaption piece that we're talking about today. And we say that because we know like 70%, and Gartner shared a study recently, 70% of that B2B buying process really happens before that technical buyer ever contacts the organization or supplier that they're trying to purchase from. So a lot of the decisioning is happening before they ever reach out to your organization. And they're comparing options across multiple different sources, including search, which includes AI now, supplier websites, technical content, videos. And the sales team is really entering the conversation at the very tail end of the entire process. And so what this means is that by the time that prospect really reaches out to the supplier or they submit a form contact, they've really already formatted some pretty strong opinions. And for a salesperson to overcome some of those strong opinions, if they're not the perceived favorite coming into a conversation, it's really setting them up for some challenging conversations, if they're even going to be able to win at that point. So the questions we have is like today are, is your brand part of that process? And where have you done the research to know where your brand sits within that whole process? And so sharing a little bit more, we want to go a little bit deeper into this. So a lot of companies are really relying on their sales teams, their trade shows, referrals. It's kind of the way that things have always been mentality. This has always worked for us in the past. It will continue to work for us in the future thinking. And that same Gartner study shared that actually 60% of technical buyers would absolutely prefer a rep-free buying experience. They don't want to talk to your sales teams. They don't want to approach your trade show booth. They want to be able to get all the information they need and to complete their process without ever talking to anybody. And that is a huge shift for this industry to overcome. So you need to, as that supplier, be investing in marketing that's aligned with how those buyers are actually thinking today. And some common gaps that we've seen lately just include there's limited visibility in search. There's not a structured campaign strategy that really is making sure you're showing up in the right places at the right time. There's a lack of educational content for those really technical buyers, whether that's videos, downloads, PDFs, help guides, or there's just minimal presence across multiple channels. Like B2B is really focusing, like as long as we're really strong in our one channel, we don't need to be anywhere else. And that just isn't the case anymore today. So a really effective strategy is when those e-commerce companies and those B2B companies really implement an omni-channel cross-strategy approach that can be significantly impactful for their target audience. And again, we're not telling you need to spend millions of dollars because most B2B companies don't need to do that. It's just about being really intentional and understanding why you're doing it, what you're doing it, and who you're doing it for. And so that kind of performance really comes from focusing on those high intent search terms, building out scalable campaigns, expanding into platforms where your buyers are looking for information and where they're spending time when they're online. And then just continuously optimizing, taking in the data, looking at what did we do, what worked, where are we getting really qualified engagements, where should we be focusing more time, energy, efforts, or budgets to be the most impactful. And how can we shift our strategies? Like, it's a living thing anymore. It's not a set it for a year and forgot it. It really is a living plan that does need to evolve as your buyers change and as you're gathering data and understanding what's going on so that you do have predictable growth.
Yeah. And continuing with Karina said, one of the biggest opportunities in B2B is capturing demand that's already there. Like she had mentioned, buyers are already actively looking for solutions, whether that be suppliers, products, things like that. So there already is that market. It's just, are you capitalizing on that? Are you showing up where they're searching? If you're not visible in those high interest areas, your competitors might be. So kind of shaping the buyer's decision before, so they're able to kind of shape the buyer's decision before you've even had a chance to even show up. So they might already have opinions, or they might already have, kind of like Karina said, they might have already made a decision before they've even really done full research. So it's kind of just showing up and being visible across those channels, and showing up where it really matters. People aren't really relying on one source of information anymore. They're validating through multiple channels and making decisions. This includes places like search engines, your actual product or supplier websites, technical information, industry content, things like that. Video platforms, if they're wanting a little bit more in-depth content about what your product is or what your service is. And as Karina mentioned, AI tools. I think that is one of the biggest areas that is really expanding, is people are able to just type into ChatGPT, hey, this is what I'm looking for. Can you provide me some information about this? It will then, using either SEO or different algorithms, it's able to find either your website or competitor's website. And it's kind of just being on the forefront of those platforms. And that's kind of where omnichannel steps in. So omnichannel is kind of just the approach of not just being in one single location, being in multiple spots. So that might be something like having page search. So this would be people that are searching for either your product or something related to your industry and showing up. And this is going to be very low funnel. This is people that are very interested in your product or potentially interested in your services. Having a paid social campaign. This is to help build your brand awareness so people know what you are and what you do. Video, this kind of like I'd mentioned before, being able to explain the complex ideas or solutions that you offer. SEO, and as I'd mentioned with AI, being able to show up not only as like an industry leader or industry insights, but having actual content that makes sense for what your product is. And on top of that, retargeting. You have people that have maybe done all of these things or maybe done some of these things. Obviously, they're interested in your product or your service, and being able to go back and stay in the forefront, stay relevant to them, where they might have seen it in the morning and then it's at night and they're like, oh, I completely forgot I was going to look this up. Cool, I'm back on their website. Kind of just having those different sources and different channels kind of play a role in helping bring people to make a decision. And then kind of just most successful B2B strategies are not building on a single channel. They're now building channels that work together. Kind of like I'd walk through, a buyer might discover your brand through search. So they might be looking for something and then they notice you. They continue it later on their day. They learn more about you through either a video content or a display on a website. And then they come back later through another paid ad. So it just kind of just get a connected experience builds the increased likelihood of conversions, basically. So the more that they're able, the more touch points you have with the user, the more likely they are to become a conversion.
And this really is important for the manufacturing companies and for anybody that has a B2B audience, because the companies that are winning today, again, aren't necessarily the biggest companies. They're not the ones that have the most budget or spending the most money. They're those that are most visible and that are truly aligned with their buyer's journey and with the channels and resources that they're going to gather information. If you can show up early, if you can provide the value, if you can stay consistent across those channels, you're going to put yourself in a position to really win more business before your sales team ever gets involved. So that when your sales team gets involved, it's a slam dunk. It's not then a whole round of persuasion opportunities or shifting opinions. So if there's one final takeaway in everything that we have to say, it's this: B2B buyers are already researching your products. They are looking at your solutions, and they're making decisions on whether it's right for them before they're ever contacting your company. They're looking at your competitors. The question is whether your strategy is really built to align with that process. And so investing in visibility, investing in high intent targeting, taking that omnichannel approach that Spencer shared is really the one consistent way to grow your business in the current environment that we're in. And so companies that ultimately win are those that separate themselves from their competitors. They really provide the information. They have a lot of information out there, and they're available across multiple channels. And so we shared a blog here on the screen. It's on our website. You can go and you can kind of read it yourself, like where people are actually going to get information. It's very broad. It's not specific to one company, one brand, one e-commerce, one manufacturing solution. It really is broad enough. But if you have any questions, if you want to better understand, like, how are you visible? How are you showing up? Reach out. Let us know. We'd love to have that conversation with you. Would be more than happy to provide some resources that we look at to evaluate your visibility online.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah, and if you guys have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them in the chat, even if it's after the fact. If you're watching the rerun of this, feel free to leave them in the comments, and we will get to it either at another 10 at 10 or just directly on whatever platform.
Awesome. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you, guys.